off, it goes and goes and goes. Well, when it runs out of paper, unplug it. Along with what you sent, the classes they given. You going to any of them?
They're during the workday, and it's hard.
Mary tried to get me in. She said, "Which one you want?" I said, "The one on shorefront and planning." And I wanted the afternoon session, and it's telling her that I've got to attend the morning session in order to get the afternoon. And I says, "All I want's the afternoon without lunch." Let's find out what time it is. They wouldn't give her what time it was.
Yeah, I think you, I bet you it's not set up so you can do only a half day kind of thing.
After an hour of fooling around on the computer, I says, "Here's what." I took the paper, I ripped it, threw it away, said, "Forget it."
Well, I'm going, so if I get any handouts, I can bring those in.
Thank you. That would be fantastic. Do that.
Lunch better be worth it for what, $13.50? I think that's what it was, $13.50 for lunch. Yeesh.
Chicken.
At the Civic Center. No, it's not gonna be worth it. That's it.
Not likely.
It might be warm, but it won't be worth it.
Yeah. All right, Nick. Thank you for sending out everything. All that you did. I think we're ready to start the meeting, aren't we? Everybody's here that's going to be here. Rich will not be here. We have enough for a quorum. Welcome back. First order of business is to review the minutes from March 2nd. Everybody has a copy? Perfect.
I don't see anything that I wanna change.
Okay.
I see George does.
Don't want to disappoint.
That's right.
I see one too, but probably the same one.
Everybody through the minutes? What kind of edits do we have?
I have a couple on just the first page. So under new business, first paragraph, last line of that paragraph that starts with board also asks that the contractor put his, rather than ID number, it should be DEP certification number. Then got the next paragraph, second line, rather than, at the end of that line, rather than better business, it should be best management practices.
That was mine.
And then the following line, the very next line that starts off with practices, at the very end, I think for, to be more specific, I would suggest after square feet, we add of structures. Might be a better way to handle that, but somebody else can come up with it. That's all I got. Oh, well, one last thing, minor, the page number, I thought maybe I heard you grunt over there, so I thought maybe you
I
caught
heard
that.
I didn't know what it was, but it's like,
202.
yeah. Pete, do you have anything?
No.
No. Roger, you had nothing? I had just one question more than, before it becomes a comment. On page 1, so not 202, 1, the last paragraph under new business, the second line where it says, submitting a letter written by the applicant stating that Jill Edwards is representing him.
By the owner.
I would suggest the applicant or the owner.
By the owner.
Yeah.
I
The other,
told her to bring that, she never did.
she
She didn't bring
She
it to the
didn't-
meeting,
I
no.
met with her and I said, you need that and you need the DEP certification. number." She didn't bring it.
She did say you were very, very good working with her on that.
Well, she does put together a good plan.
yeah.
Jill's pretty thorough.
She seemed very thorough and very professional in what she
Yeah.
talked about with us. The only other thing I want to make sure to mention, where we have reason, and they have a value that says shoreland, I'd like to, for every application that we receive and process, be as clear as possible. So we can expand that, something, I mean, shoreland starts to get at it, but something else like,
Non-conforming structure,
in
in
on
that
and on,
case.
in this case, non-conforming.
You could say shoreline non-conforming structure.
Anything to help provide clarity, because
I think I mentioned that at the beginning of the meeting too, so it should be on the recording.
yeah, good point. That's all I had. Anything else from anybody?
Not about the minutes, but just for your benefit, Gary, we did approve that with a condition that you bring that letter in and send it to you.
Oh, okay, I haven't talked to her.
Yeah, and attach it
It
to
is
it.
in, I didn't know.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah, I can give it to you.
I know.
Or
it's-
whatever, as long as it's in the
you have
file.
it.
Yep, it's in the file.
So I entertain a motion then.
Motion, accept the minutes of March 2nd as omitted.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Any more discussion on that? No? All those in favor? Thanks very much. And our next item, really, the only one, is the shoreline zoning ordinance work. Just for the record, there was Nick and I had an email exchange about whether or not anything else should be on here, on tonight's agenda. Specifically, if we didn't have an application to process, that if we would do anything with the sign discussion. I took the liberty of saying we had charted out our priorities, and they included processing applications for permits and shoreline zone work first. So I suggested that we stick to that plan and not deter from that. So,
That's fine.
okay. So, thank you for getting the main revised statutes. Did you were you able to download this? Or, I know there's a lot of talk about how to get it and.
He actually sent it to me, I believe.
Thank you for
Yeah.
getting that. Did you find it troublesome to get it? Not too bad,
I didn't, provide links for every section, subsection, because some of
okay.
it has to do with enforcement, some of it had to do with other issues that really aren't relevant to what we need.
Did you meet with Colin?
No,
You
no,
did?
I didn't. Rich did, didn't he, or he
Oh, it
tried
was-
to?
He
that's
tried
right.
to.
I
He
know
tried
something-
to.
Oh, that's right. I
Yeah.
forgot who was gonna do that.
Don't recall if he was actually successful.
No, I don't think he was.
Yeah. So how should we approach this? I mean, with this, we have things that to consider revised statutes. Do you have any recommendations for us going through this?
Well, it seems like we got a number of moving parts that we need to consider. And one is this list that we already compiled of what's in the comprehensive plan that we should be looking at in terms of possible changes. So that's one piece. Then then there are the guidelines, the DEP guidelines, new guidelines, and what in there has changed that we might want to adopt. Then let's see what else. And then Pete had gotten us the town of Smithfields, although I didn't have a chance to do a side-by-side either with our ordinance or with comparison or with the new guidelines. But it looked to me like, just real quickly, that they followed those guidelines to a T. That they basically adopted those guidelines.
That's good.
So,
What's in the comprehensive plan right now that doesn't mesh with our ordinance that exists right now? Is there something we should look at real quick?
well, I could go, or you can, Peter, whichever, we could go down that list and then,
I think we ought to do that, and then if we need any guidance or anything, see what the other towns have done.
Yeah, makes sense.
and there's actually, I found, one item that, that's in the comprehensive plan, but didn't get captured by this table.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, that would be an important one to
So-
grab. Yeah, it's, well, I mean, we do have our list here, so the set of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 listed things that deal with the shoreline zoning ordinance. And then it sounds like if there's yet another one, there would be 10 items to address.
Yeah, there's
Just-
some duplication here, but,
I guess, not that it has to be done in this order at all, as far as I'm concerned. This list that we have is something very visible, and it's something we've talked about with numerous audiences, not only the town manager, but the select board, as well as other business people. So for those reasons, I'm thinking it might be good to at least demonstrate we were making progress with this. So I would advocate we kind of tackle these first. In addition to what you've talked about, George, there were some other items that, so not just these, but over the years, we've come upon some items that are maybe not listed here, but they are found in the ordinance currently, where we have seen contradiction from one area to another. And so in order to clear up some of those things, so just wanted to make sure we toss that hat into the ring too for another subset of things
Yep.
to
yeah,
clear
no,
up.
that's a good point. I'm sure you guys know more of what those are. The one that comes to my mind is the waiver that was a legal problem. It came up when we were dealing with Mrs. Johnson.
Exactly, and so I don't think we'll forget it, I just wanted to make sure to bring it up. So, certainly by is it okay with the board to go over these first, or, yeah? Does everybody have that checklist? You have that checklist?
I got George got it.
Okay. Do you wanna just, you can all read them, I'm sure, but.
What's the first one? Go out loud. What's the first one in shoreline zone?
Protect deer yards and other wildlife habitat, critical natural areas. So,
Is
I-
that in shoreline zoning?
well, I mean,
Currently?
that's a good question, because that was what I was asking myself, well,
I
are
never
there
saw
any
that.
deer yards in the shoreland zone? And the answer is maybe.
Affirm maybe.
Um,
Are there?
let's see, well, there,
Cause,
I mean, this is, I'll start.
sure,
Those are, I mean, that's not at a good scale or anything, but you can see it's actually on the property, one area where it looks like it could be in the shoreline zone is on the property that we got the request for changing the resource protection 20% slope
That's
Oh.
down
on Long Pond.
yeah, off the Down Road?
No, off
Castle
of,
Island.
Yeah, just
Off
before
Castle Island.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if we went in this direction, I think we'd need to do a little bit of research, including maybe having the fishery, inland wildlife biologists come and meet with us to make sure we understand the caveats around these mapping, because I've gotten different stories at different times from them about how much confidence to put in into the mapping, but that, if that, assuming that came from the DEP website, it was GIS layer on the website under shoreline zoning, actually.
Oh, wow.
And so, I think that's where I found it. And but most of them are not in the shoreline zone,
No.
but there might be a few.
Right.
So it's something that we shouldn't just arbitrarily throw out, I don't think.
Well, it says protect deer yards, then comma, other wildlife habitat. Now, I'd like to know what is the definition of other wildlife habitat. They're talking specifically deer. Now, what's the other wildlife habitat?
Well,
Because, that has to be defined, because,
Yeah.
that's the whole ball of wax.
If
That's
you're down near
nature.
the water, then you're talking ducks, loons.
Right, and, we're getting ourselves into a,
Well, yeah, that's,
difficult situation, telling people
The-
the property, all of a sudden, they gotta pay attention to that, all the rest of the nature
Yeah.
out there.
and
I don't wanna have my name on it.
I agree with
need to
you.
have that defined very closely.
I don't know what the definition would be necessarily, but I think typically that means the map critical natural areas. So that would be like the black tern nesting area down here on Mesolonsky, and there were also under shoreline zoning, I found a GIS layer for mapping waterfowl and wading bird wetlands. So that's at least one other consideration, and I could pass that around for people to look at. I mean, some of those clearly, like, for example, this is already resource protection. Some of it, I'm not sure about what other areas, whether they're obviously in the shoreline zone, but how they're mapped and stuff like that. And
I think with that, where it's already developed, you're not gonna have birds in there, the wild, the wild,
yeah,
they're gonna have a tendency to stay away from, existing camps.
so I mean, for all I know, all these areas are already taken care of in the existing mapping. Without doing a side-by-side comparison, you just don't know them. So that would be one task, if you will. would be
Yeah,
good.
you can take a look at that.
And the comprehensive plan relied heavily on that inland fish and wildlife GIS layer, starting with habitat, or it's actually multiple layers,
Yeah, but the beginning with habitat.
or beginning with habitat, right?
Right, it did. Rightfully so.
And I suspect that's all of these two links led me to, was specific pages in that.
So, yeah, there's certainly some discussion to be had around these things. And Pete, I hear what you're saying about telling people what to do with some stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, we can't, every place that a chickadee nests, obviously, is not what we're talking about. We're talking about more significant wildlife habitat that's got some kind of regional or statewide importance.
Yeah, that would have to be defined in a
Yeah.
definition.
Right.
really.
right, it would have
Then
to
we
be.
can go forward with it,
Yeah.
talk about it.
And like I said, we may have already got that covered. I just don't know. But
So, from an ordinance perspective, at some point, would properly referencing these areas, in our ordinance would be the appropriate thing. But before we go down that very far, you brought up the idea about maybe consulting with a IF&W person. Do you think it'd be wise to have that person come in here?
I think it'd be helpful to have everybody be able to
Yeah.
talk
Yeah.
to that person and
Okay.
I don't know that we need to do that lickety-split, but, you know, once we get into it, if we, you know, if we're gonna go down, if we're gonna try to, you know, I think the first thing we probably need to do is see if, maybe do a comparison of those beginning with habitat GIS layers with our existing map. It may be that there's nothing to be added.
Right.
I just don't know. Maybe Rich would know, but I don't. Without actually going through that exercise, so.
And I'm trying to get back to the idea that from the comprehensive plan work, what came about was this list of things that had to be changed in several ordinances. So inevitably, for me, I want to find out where is it lacking in the ordinance. So in other words, if there's a list that says, oh, protect deer, you know, do something about protecting deer habitat and other wildlife areas,
Yeah.
like it shows there. Well, I'd like to use that as a pointer and say, okay, where in the ordinance are we insufficient, or what's lacking there?
Okay, it may make sense if
You know what
we
I'm
have
saying?
like, some inland fisheries come in. The people from a comprehensive committee that work specifically with that language, that part of it. A page would be page 116 of the comprehensive plan, right? Is that-
117.
117, that they be invited to come to the meeting, because, you know, hear what the fellow person, inland fisheries has to say is, and then questions can be, get some communication going on between the people who work with, you know, that page, 117. You know, that makes sense, you know? It would be efficient.
Depending on the recommendation, sometimes there's precious little actually for discussion in the comprehensive plan, so like on, that 117, I think, is just the recommendations. Yeah, recommendations pages, so that's probably the natural resources subcommittee that
Yes.
worked on that. Sometimes, though, you go back to the text, and there's a considerable amount of discussion, other times there's precious little as to the basis of that recommendation.
Yeah, and I guess for me, I'm thinking let's find out, is the basis, is it anecdotal? Is it just because something passed, they didn't like it, that they, you know, want to make the change, or is there some level of assurance they're looking for that we're not providing in the current ordinance? I mean, the main revised statutes and guidelines documents outline things that are at the state level, right? We can adopt them, like you said before, George, right? Letter for letter, we can have it right down to the T. I'm not suggesting we do that, because there are some things that we may not, well, we can do that for things that we want to adopt. We don't have to adopt all things. Some things are optional, some things are not. For those that are not optional, we may want to consider that. But I'm thinking that those things do cover many of these concerns. And making sure that we have good language in our ordinance is gonna be key.
The only thing I see in this so far for wildlife is on page 29, where it says different districts, wildlife management practices, and it's written yes across the board. And on page 69, will not have an adverse impact on spawning grounds, fish, aquatic life, birds, and other wildlife habitat, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, that is way too broad. I mean, that
Yeah.
gets to your concern, you know, are we protecting chickadee nesting trees?
Just because there's a bird's nest there this year, it may not be there next year or vice versa.
Yeah, or
So,
unless they knew the chickadees are doing okay.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And, you know, there's other areas too, where there's similarly vague language in in our current ordinance, not to jump ahead too far, but like, there's a recommendation about, you know, minimizing phosphorus runoff and stormwater runoff. Well, you may recall, there's language just like that, you know, stormwater will not be unduly increased or something like that. Well, what's that mean, you know? that we could add some, specificity to and some
Mhm.
more meaningful standards to possibly,
Mm-hmm. True.
like we did with commercial development review ordinance.
Hmm.
In fact, we might be able to just
Right.
copy and paste.
Yeah, exactly. Which would be a huge workload reduction for us.
And some consistency with, from one ordinance to the other is
Right.
actually something that the comprehensive plan speaks to,
Too. Yeah.
which would be a good thing.
I have a question. Do we have our current ordinance at all in digital form?
Shoreline ordinance?
Right. Do we have the shoreline zoning ordinance in digital form? And when I say digital, I mean something that we could revise
Oh,
Like in Word or something.
as opposed to a PDF.
I'm sure we do.
In-
We should have it.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
surprised
some
we
of the
didn't.
edits that were made were as recent as 2011. I mean, that was before my time, but probably some of you were here then.
Yes.
So, Mary Vogel must have had a,
Mm-hmm.
If we had,
That-
if we have a PDF and you wanna get in a Word, there's a program out there you can purchase, right? For
Yeah.
$100, something like that, and
Yeah.
it'll convert it automatically.
Yeah, there are ways to do that.
Yeah,
For sure, which would be good. And the only reason why I asked about that is I was curious about, you know, if we wanted to use some tools to look for terms that where we're
Ah.
trying to address,
oh, yeah.
like
Right.
this
Do
point, like
search.
say for example, phosphorus control.
Yeah.
Okay, find out where it is. We can say, oh yeah, for every mention of phosphorus control, are we addressing this or not? You know,
right,
or any of these types of
that would
things.
be a good thorough way to do it.
You know, it'd be a diligent approach to it. So Nick, I guess, could you just find out if we can get it in digital form, whether Mary had a copy that we can basically have a working draft on?
Definitely.
Yeah, that's sort of fundamental, isn't it?
I would think so.
I'm sure we're doing the address.
You know, one thing that's, I just want to remind everybody about when I initially created this and then everybody added their own contributions to it. You know, just to be able to fit it, I had to sort of abbreviate the recommendation, so it might be helpful if I read the whole
Okay.
recommendation. So that one about wildlife and deer yards in its entirety reads, strengthen regulatory protection by adding deer yards and other state-listed, so that helps with the definition, state-listed wildlife resources to be protected in subdivision, shoreline zoning and site plan review based on current information from beginning with habitat database. So that adds some specificity or
Yeah.
to the definition. It's what's in that database, which is intended to be regional and statewide in importance. Require applicants to request review from the natural areas program when in area of known unusual.
What was
the
that,
natural-
what was the last part? What you said?
Require applicants to request review from the natural areas program when in an area of known unusual communities or rare plants. And that's something that's a service they provide to all municipalities.
Who's they?
They being the critical natural areas program, which is located in the Department of Conservation.
Yeah, so if an applicant had to do that, how much would it cost them to do that?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay,
Their tax dollars pay for that.
Yeah,
Oh.
you already pay for it.
You own it, Pete.
okay,
You and I pay for it.
alright, okay, alright.
But the only times they'd be doing that is, if I'm hearing this right, is that if what they're proposing to do might be touching on something that would be by what we're talking about,
Right, which would,
right?
right.
It-
Would be any wetland.
Not even every wetland, it would be a subset of wetlands. So like, for example,
Like what?
one that is a map, I know, I don't know them all, but is again using the black tern nesting area, which is only one of two in the entire state.
Yeah, where there aren't any buildings anyways.
No, right, yeah.
So
I
that's
mean,
not-
nobody's gonna,
Well, it's
I mean, that, you know,
okay.
nobody's gonna
So
wanna do
that's going
anything
to
there.
affect, pretty much, focus on new buildings going in its shoreline zoning.
Right.
New,
Mhm.
new, first
Yeah,
time,
right,
you know,
Mhm.
vacant lot, new
Right.
building.
Right.
Right, yeah,
Right.
absolutely, yeah, no, that's the only way.
rather than additions and
Oh,
stuff
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
It
yeah,
just-
yeah,
Alright, okay,
yeah,
let's-
yeah,
I wanted to clarify that.
yeah, yeah.
No, it's good.
In my mind, yeah.
Yeah,
Alright,
no, it would be
okay.
only for those things that people apply to us for a permit for, which is new,
A vacant lot,
yeah,
a
vacant
vacant
lot,
lot,
or,
new place,
yeah,
yeah,
Right,
not,
'cause
not
there's-
a tear down or addition.
Right, in this particular case that George mentioned with the turn, the black turn areas, there are, I don't know all the areas, but I'm thinking there are no buildings in those areas now.
No, will there ever be
Right,
Yeah.
in
Right.
most of these areas.
right,
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 right, because getting to them is a pain in the
Impossible.
butt and would be expensive.
It's wet.
and it's
and
wet.
Yeah, so you'd have lots of things, lots of barriers, lots of obstacles.
All right, just to play devil's advocate, so why would you need to have any regulations? Any further regulations if you got regulations already?
Number one, because it doesn't only apply to the black turn thing.
So what else would it apply
Deer
to?
yards.
Yeah, deer
Wintering
deer yards. The language that was documented in that which George just
Yeah,
read.
like state listed wildlife
Okay,
resources.
So that needs that we gotta get a hold of that.
Yeah, and
We
that's all available online.
Yeah, okay, we gotta make a note, Nikki, make a note of that, we get a hold of that particular list, so we can look at it, see what's in there.
So-
You
I
know,
think I know where you're going. So the list of making sure he knows what to do. A list of what?
what's listed in the, this document we're talking. You know, he said, you know, what,
State listed wildlife
Yeah.
resources.
what are they? What,
Probably the easiest way to do that would be,
what's
it's
listed?
not tonight, but you know, for us to run through, beginning with habitat and look at the different layers. Wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Wouldn't that be the easiest way to
that'd be a
do
pretty
that?
good way to go.
I don't know, maybe there's a better way, but that
Yeah,
would be
trying to
one
think what
way.
else.
You can do that on your home computer too, to look at that.
This,
It's kinda interesting, really.
well, we get, well, I'm just saying, we'll do it right now, but, you know, we gotta get a copy of what's listed in this site, you know, and, you know, what kind of critters we talking about,
Right,
you know?
Yep. Right, and for some of them, I'm thinking would never touch them.
Right.
Others, we might.
Right,
Right, and in those cases, that's why I think we'd want to have the appropriate language in our shoreline zone ordinance that would address this concern as identified by the comprehensive plan
right,
subgroups.
right, and we, you know, we could have like a table, you know, as an addendum, you know, this is what they are, blah, 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 you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed. George, I don't know if we want to move on to the next one just for conversation.
that's also on 117, so that's the one about streams, right? Kettle Hole Ponds.
Yeah, read that, what's it all about?
Revise the shoreline zoning ordinance or adopt other land use provisions as needed to include areas within 75 feet of all perennial streams and to ensure adequate protection for kettle hole bogs and ponds. So, I remember this coming up with the kettle hole
Right.
over here by the canoe place, behind the canoe place.
Mhm.
That, I believe that's not within our shoreline zoning, right?
No.
So there's a series of those in town that are not covered by shoreline zoning, so this recommendation kind of gets at those. And then, I don't really know, off the top of my head, probably some of you do, but, you know, what streams are covered in town now, which ones aren't, you know,
Mhm.
and perennial, I mean, that's defined now, like, at the state level, it's usually done by what is shown, in fact, the guidelines spend a lot of time on this, and it's based on a US Geological Survey. It isn't the topo maps,
Right.
it's something else that I'm not familiar with, and I tried to look at, and my computer wouldn't open it up, but you, at one point in time, before that was available, you relied on what's shown on the most recent topographical map, so,
For perennial
and the
stream.
definition of the stream is kind of a funky one, I guess. It's like from where two streams come together, from there on downstream.
Yeah, it's gotta have a mineral bottom.
It's gotta have mineral bottom, yeah, so it eliminates the intermittent stream where there's vegetation
Yeah.
growing on the bottom, and then there's actually I was gonna, if Rich was here, I thought maybe he would know, maybe you know, Gary, the difference between that and there's also the guidelines have, there's another stream definition, like tributary stream, that's it, which is slightly different.
Yeah, and I can't.
And that could be perennial or intermittent.
Yes, I think so, yep.
But, so this kinda intersects with the DEP guidelines,
Mhm.
and I'm not familiar enough with that or how shoreline zoning's changed over recent years to know when that came, when streams got included, but, and I don't know if you looked at our map, which streams are included at
No,
currently.
you won't.
So in our current shoreline zoning ordinance, there's a definition of a tributary stream.
Oh, there is.
So there's one. It could be, maybe it's insufficient, maybe it's sufficient, I don't know.
And it might be the same as what's in the guidelines now.
It could be.
I bet it is.
So just quickly, I don't need to probably read
No.
the whole thing, blah, blah, blah.
It's my phone.
Whether intermittent or perennial, and which is characterized by the lack of an upland vegetation
Ignore.
or presence of aquatic vegetation, and by the presence of a bed devoid of topsoil containing waterborne deposits and exposed soil, parent material of bedrock, and which flows to a water body or wetland as defined. So there's some stuff in there.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I found the part of the definition in the guidelines interesting in the sense that there are plenty of streams, but they just have, it goes from intermittent to perennial and then straight to a pond or wherever, a wetland, but there's no tributary there's no fork in that stream, if you will, there's no adjoining, and the definition in the guidelines is from that fork downstream.
Yeah.
So, anyway, it's something that, we need to look at, I think. And there's an intersection with, the recommendation prior to this, because, those streams are travel ways for wildlife, including deer. 75 feet isn't really adequate, but it's a start. Inland Fish and Wildlife guidelines are usually that if you're gonna protect the stream area for as a travel lane, you do 100 yards on either side.
I see.
But we don't have that kind of jurisdiction.
Right. Yeah, 100 yards on either side.
Yeah, so in chapter 1000, you're talking, that's the guidelines you're
Yeah.
referring to. Yeah. So it defines stream as well as tributary stream.
Right, yeah.
It doesn't say anything about perennial. Does it? No, I didn't see anything in P's.
So,
No.
I mean, it probably would be good if we could accomplish today to kind of just scope out what is
Yeah.
ahead of us.
mhm.
Maybe not entirely, but get 80% of it. The good enough for government
Sure.
standard.
I've heard that expression before.
Yeah.
Yeah, have you? I wonder why.
So I wonder if thinking about it, like, what do we have and what do we need? For any of these items. Like, so for example, if we want to address, the part about including the 75 feet of perennial streams, protect whole ponds. So what do we have for resources now to help us address this? And what do we need? The answer to the first part is we don't have much. So, I don't know, does that make sense to
Yeah.
everybody? Is that a good approach? I mean,
Yeah, no, it
could
is.
be bad.
It's very basic, and one of the things we would need, just like with the item before this, is the USGS mapping
Yeah.
that defines what is is part of the definition of a stream, and then compare it against what we already have covered,
Right.
and then figure out what's the difference.
And in the process, get a definition of perennial. Because in the ordinance, chapter 1000, I don't see the word perennial, but in the comprehensive plan, it says perennial. So
Yeah.
we got a mismatch.
Although the definition that Peter read
Right.
is the traditional definition of perennial that you see in other state statutes and,
Oh, really?
yeah.
Well, yeah, we didn't-
Like the
we-
Natural Resources Act.
Okay, we would have to get that clarified.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And going forward, Peter, I think it would be good that as we do clarify things,
Yeah.
by having those things minuted,
Right.
so that when we finally get to a point and say, okay, when we have revised this ordinance to address this concern, you know, we have a way to say, this is a breadcrumb trail to get to this point.
Yeah.
you know.
What's the next one?
So do we know what we need? Because we talked about getting USGS maps.
Yeah, we may, like with a lot of things, we may find as we take the first step, look at the maps and compare them against our current map,
Yeah.
we'll figure out that we need something else too.
Sure. One
but-
thing may.
But I think as a starting point,
I'm saying Jesus because I'm thinking it would be so nice if we had some easy to view mapping products, so all of us could see it.
right, I knew you were gonna say that.
Yeah.
You mean like on a PowerPoint projector or something like that, that we could look at it
Yeah.
from live from the web?
Yeah, that'd be good. Do we have a second computer to be able to use? Because this computer is used for this recording, which I wouldn't want to interrupt that process at all. I'm just curious if for this exercise of going through the something in the future, we're going to make some revisions. Is there another laptop or something we could use? Hook it up to that other projector. You know, project onto the wall or something, and say, okay. You know, for the USGS stuff, which is I'm going to assume is more up to date than what we have already on some other stuff. Do some comparison.
Yes, definitely.
Cool.
Yep.
Thanks.
Who knows PowerPoint?
Huh?
Who knows how to work PowerPoint?
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
we'll work it out. Because it doesn't have to be in PowerPoint necessarily to view it.
No.
You can have anything
Oh,
going
really?
to it to go out.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It can be a PDF. It can be a web page. It
Oh, I
can
know
be,
that.
Yep.
Yeah.
It need not be only PowerPoint. Although that's the most common use.
Yeah, okay.
Moving on to the next item, is that okay?
Yeah,
It seemed like the next one, that if I'm reading this correctly, determine if shoreline zoning ordinance should regulate all mapped flood plains.
So the
Some of
full
that's-
recommendation on that, is continue to enforce the town's floodplain ordinance and determine whether the shoreline zone should extend beyond 250 feet in areas where floodplain boundaries are greater. I'm not quite sure I understand how we could do that, but
I guess I'm wondering too, I mean, what authority would we have that would be, I'm thinking the answer is no, we can't, but I could be wrong. What authority would this town have to do with land that's outside of what's defined as a shoreline zone
yeah.
right.
area?
I thought it was gonna say to make sure everything within the shore, all floodplains that are within the shoreline zone are covered by shoreline zoning.
Oh, I see.
Because, you know, that mapping's changed, of course, and,
Right.
and
And would that be a matter of just making sure that things are precise or up to date relative to those things?
I think so.
The accuracy kind
I
of thing?
think so. I think, again, it's a comparison of current floodplain mapping with our shoreline zoning map. You know, where this is all heading and, potentially is heading, is, we may need to revise the map.
Right, right,
And this was why I asked, not to get off subject, but I was asking about our budget.
right. Yeah.
So, you know, some of this may have to wait until we may have to make a special budget request depending on the costs and stuff for some of that.
Yeah, true. So is there anything in that comment, George, from the Natural Resource Committee that is talking about this one, that would be outside the state definition of a shoreline zone.
Yeah, I don't see how, my first thought, maybe Rich could add to this, but, and maybe the guidelines, I know the guidelines deal with floodplain, something in the same sort of area of concern, but, my first take is, we're limited to the shoreline zone, so,
Right, a lot of the resource protection areas are based on the flood map in the same areas.
And so the resource protection stuff,
Yeah.
we have defined, and we
Yeah.
wanna make sure that we're carrying that forward.
Right.
Cause the land use chart that you talked about already, you know, that's a clear example of where we,
Right.
indicate some stuff.
It just says in the chapter 1000 defines floodway. And it says the channel of a river or otherwise water course and adjacent land areas that must be reserved in order to discharge the 100-year flood without cumulatively increasing the water surface elevation by more than 1 foot in height. That's kinda all encompassing, I guess. No, that's a.
yeah. I mean, I think, you know, we don't have the expertise for mapping this stuff, so we have to rely on existing mapping. And, you know, I think it's kind of a time-consuming task, but I think we need to get maps out and
Right.
compare one against the other with our shoreline zoning map. Let's see.
Now, one entity that does have some mapping capabilities is KV Cog. We're in a new year. We're still a member. Is that accurate? So we pay our dues there. We have utilized Chris's services to a great extent last year. KV Cog and Chris was the generous old amount. Is this something we can go back to them at all and help us provide outputs for comparison?
Well, I mean, of course, they did the comprehensive plan, including the land use mapping, which includes the shoreline zone. So I'm not quite sure how they did this, but apparently they have that as a GIS layer. How they got that from, you may recall the problems that Rich ran into on our
Yeah.
behalf, trying to get just a new map from
Cool.
Sewell Company up in Old Town. How, you know, how KV Cog ended up with a layer, I don't know. But you're right, if that's the case, then they should be able to, because I remember when they were working on all that they were bringing in beginning with habitat mapping, for example, and they, you know, bringing that in and overlaying that and that kind of thing, and then decisions were made. You probably know better than I, or maybe you, Roger. I wouldn't, you know, I came to that land use subcommittee late, but you guys were on it, and along with Rich and others. I mean, the worst they could tell us is go pound sand. We've given Belgrade all the time we're going to.
Yeah,
No,
no.
it wouldn't hurt to reach out to them and see what they can help us with.
Okay. So to reach out to KV Cog, does that have to be done by the town manager? Do you know?
Do you know, Nick?
I don't know.
Probably would be a good idea to
Yeah, run it by them.
minimum
think so.
talk to her.
So maybe what I could do then is to make a request to the town manager, copy all of you on it, and just say, hey, we'd like to reach out to KV Cog for, some help as we go through this process of assessing what we need for shoreland zoning ordinance revisions. Specifically, one of the short-term things might be to call on them for help relative to comparing GIS layers.
Yeah. I mean, that would be so much more efficient and less prone to error than us you know, we got this laptop set up on this page and we got our map over here and we're going back and forth and trying to figure out, you know, did we cover, you know, this deer yard, did we cover that stream, did we cover, you know, et cetera.
So what I will do, so a homework assignment for me will be to write to Carrie to see if she would request that KV Cog help us in this endeavor. But I'll be honing in on how our goal is to work on these recommendation or action items where it applies to shoreline zoning revisions, and that we have I guess identified the need for map-related GIS help. And we understand that they may have the tools and technology for efficiency's sake to help us make those determinations quicker. So I'll come up with something like that.
Yep.
Does that sound reasonable?
Mhm.
And then if she says, no, can't do it, then we'll know we can't do it.
Yeah.
If she says, sure, I'll reach out, then she does, and then maybe it's Chris, maybe it's somebody else who says, yeah, I got a GIS guy, girl, whatever. Help us with these things. We'll specify questions, maybe have them come in, whatever.
And even if they respond and say, we can't do that kind of level of work under your membership, but it would cost you $5,000 or something like that,
Yeah.
then we'd at least have a dollar figure which to plan around.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So that'd be good. Okay, and that may help us on many, maybe not all, but many of these these types of things.
Yeah, I was just looking down, they can't help us on everything. but
No, they can't.
That'd be a big help at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the next one was
Control phosphorus,
from all new development in the shoreland zone.
where are you?
If I'm reading this correctly,
Well, that would be mostly in language, right? Make sure that the language is in it, like what we're doing right now with best practice
right?
Yeah.
management.
Right.
I'm wondering
Yeah.
if
So,
guidelines,
Okay.
would help us.
Well, control the phosphorus from all new development, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I suspect we well, I mean, we may be able to borrow liberally from what we've already done.
right,
For the commercial development review ordinance, because some of those standards are actually for residential uses too.
and they got it written nicely here too, for all new development.
Right. Right.
Right, yeah. Is that on 119, did it say?
Yep, 118.
118?
No, it's 119, sorry.
119, yeah, okay.
And we'll have to include that in shoreline and subdivision too, so. What did we put in for commercial development? Cause that was supposed to be in that too.
For phosphorus control?
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris added a whole
Right.
section.
So all we gotta do is run off that. So KV Cog's already done that for us.
So I guess this must be the one they're referencing, is it 7-5? Yeah. Ensure continued strong levels of protection to controls phosphorus from all sources of new development and other land use disturbances, improved implementation of the ordinance's existing phosphorus, stormwater, and soil erosion control standards by using the board's existing authority. Oh, and this last one has to do with the commercial development one. Using the board's existing authority to hire technical reviews of these submissions to ensure they are complete and meet the requirements of the ordinance paid for by the developer. That's that clause in the commercial development review ordinance.
Yeah.
But,
As you were reading that too, I also was thinking about not only revisions to the language in the ordinance, but any process improvement to help assure that we're getting the right things done. Like, for example, having, on the application for having the certified contractor number. I mean, it's a small thing, but that helps at least provide some assurance to the town that it's just not somebody.
Oh, absolutely, no, it's huge, I think.
Yeah,
Right,
and that's not an ordinance thing, that's just a process thing for us.
right.
And there might be little things like that around, that we just be mindful of and see where we can improve. Just an idea.
Yep.
So with that one then, George, when we're talking about the phosphorus control from new development, we have some things at our disposal now, right? And what else do we need to address this one? Because it sounds like it's going to be a comparison, probably from language we have, language that's been provided.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of comparing the existing language we have, which my recollection is pretty vague and
Yeah, it
lacks any standards really to speak of. What we've already come up with for the commercial development review ordinance, and then probably what's in the guideline, DEP guidelines regarding
Yeah.
that, which I looked at that pretty quickly. Quickly, meaning it took me 2 hours to get through it. It's not nothing. It make good reading before bed, but there's not a lot there. It's really shocking
In
for,
chapter
with regard to
1000?
phosphorus and stormwater control.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah,
Because I would have expected there would be some.
I know. I thought there were
Com-
real lot of specifics.
But not.
Not that I found. Now that was my first blush through it, but so. But anyway, I think those. I think those are the things we need to look at
Okay.
least for first cut.
So to help look through that, Pete, you had that printed out. I know we can get it in digital format too. I guess I would advocate that at some point you have a digital copy of Chapter 1000.
Oh, he sent us one.
Okay, but you have it too.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Because if again, a search feature for some of those terms to look for
Oh, I
specifics,
see.
just to make sure we're doing well.
There's no definition for phosphorus in here. You think chapter 1000 would have a definition for phosphorus, right? What do you think?
Maybe it's an
Can you define it in
Outwardly.
different ways? I
Yeah.
mean, it's the chemical is the chemical is the chemical.
yeah.
Well, I don't
it
know.
is.
I mean, a lot of people wouldn't know that necessarily, You can't make that assumption. What is a
yeah,
chemical? Someone can argue,
Right.
people putting on, stuff to improve their green lawn and all that. You're using seaweed. Someone might say, oh, that's, that increases the phosphorus, but then again, it doesn't. That kind of stuff needs to be defined. Because I hear that argument all the time,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They say,
It's a good point.
You know. The average landowner out there is not necessarily a biologist,
Right.
Anyway,
I'm kind of looking down at the next one. Am I going ahead too fast? No. So the next one was this came from the transportation group. Ordinances compatibility with MDOT regulations and laws.
So with the full recommendation reads like is review land use ordinances to ensure they are compatible with the Sensible Transportation Policy Act, state access management regulations, and state traffic permitting regulations for large developments. And the latter two I know nothing about, and the only thing I know about the Sensible Transportation Policy Act is that's where the state has its sign standards,
Oh.
but it's broader than that. But so I don't really,
So it's possible that because this is under shoreline zoning ordinance.
right.
My first thoughts when I heard those sentences would be like, oh, That's good, but it has nothing to do with shoreline zoning ordinance, but maybe it does somewhere.
It does to the extent, you know, we end up getting applications for, say, a commercial development in the shoreline zone, or,
That could happen.
or, yeah, or,
A condominium complex, something
yeah,
like
something
that.
like
Oh, yeah.
that,
Sure.
yeah, or hotel.
That- You know, I just
Apparently
thinking,
said something wrong.
yeah, I just thinking on Rome, up by North Pond there, where you got the stream going from, North Pond into North Bay, or Great Pond. If you're facing, if you're going downstream, you know, there's a big tract of land there to the right. And there's a big house there, and he must have about, I don't know, 5 football field lengths. Someone was saying years ago, oh, he's gonna sell a place, the guy from New Jersey, he sell it. Some hotel, chain hotel was looking at it, they put in a nice resort in there. You know, and which they could do. There's enough, that lot up there is big enough. And they had sandy beach and stuff like that. A lot of people go down there and use the sandy beach, you know? So, that could happen, you know, on Great Pond. I don't know where you do it on the Great Pond's part of Great Pond, but on the Rome side of Great Pond, it could happen up there. And so this concern, you know, this what we're talking about, may be applicable to some extent.
Yeah.
Sure.
It might be
I don't know.
something of a long shot, but
Yeah. Okay. So to address this concern, what do we need?
Now, I suppose if I would think if we could find somehow or another do a search, if that piece has been applied to any shoreline zoning within the state. For example, down in Naples and down in Sebago, or even up at the big pond up there, Moosehead.
Moosehead?
You know, if someone's already taken that into consideration and they've worked up some language. Because for us to go, you know, it'd be a lot of work to do it, you know, to start from scratch, so.
So in that case, Pete, if there has been an application for commercial review in the shoreline zone ordinance, and if, say in Moosehead, and if the town has responded by having some language in their ordinance, maybe we could borrow that, is what you're saying?
Exactly, right.
Yeah, those are two good possibilities, yeah, so either Naples or whatever.
If anybody would have it, they would.
Yeah,
yeah, right.
yeah.
The only other thing I could add to that would be if we are able to get access to KV Cog and Chris. I mean, Chris he is an engineer, and so, you know, I
Is
think
he
one
still
of the-
with KB Cog though? I thought he was gonna be retiring.
No,
I don't
not
know.
until- not- He said July 18th.
July 18th.
July 18th. the
Of this year?
Oh,
The year 18.
So we have
So,
a year.
let's suck more on his brain and
Yeah.
Chris's wife passed away.
Yeah,
Yes.
she did, like late fall,
Yeah.
early winter, right? Yeah, long battle with cancer.
It's terrible. So yeah, so maybe another inquiry to Katie
Yeah,
Cog
I-
would be another.
This is just something I don't know much about, so.
Yeah,
um,
yeah. I think we'll have several things to go to Katie
And,
Cog.
you know, I think this might be a recommendation that, might even be a carryover from the 1988 comprehensive
really?
plan. Or, actually, I may be wrong about that, it may be, there were certain sections that there was no subcommittee for, and I think this was one of them, and I think Chris wrote it,
Oh, really?
so that would be another reason to
Yeah.
potentially inquire with him, or with KV Cog, rather.
Oh, I just had a thought, in, Camp Bomazine, the Boy Scout camp, in the Horse Point Road, that's in Rome. And there was talk a few years ago that, that might get sold out, you know, and,
Sure, yeah.
and that'd be the perfect commercial development
Yeah.
to do with that too.
Yeah.
And,
That's in Rome?
No, it's not wrong.
I'm sorry, I'm wrong, that's in Belgrade.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I was gonna say,
Yeah, my son's involved with the Boy Scouts when they were trying to sell that, and they were asking way too much money for it.
Yeah, and I'd heard theoretically that legally it couldn't be done, but as you all know, a lot of things get unraveled.
They tried to sell Camp Hines and Sabattis too at the same time.
Yeah.
okay. All right, next, after that,
See, this is redundant,
are you
this
on,
spring, streams, again. Is that where you're at?
let's see if I'm reading correctly. I was at, standard condition on commercial permits only for that in application. What do I have that under? Maybe that's not appropriate.
Yeah, that's regarding commercial development.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, what's the next one after that is amend shoreline zone require, oh, the perennial streams, that's.
Yeah. Apparently that was a recommendation under two different sections.
Farming and forestry was one, and natural resource.
Yeah, I can read that one and see if it says the same thing.
Yeah, we can read it.
Uh,
See what it says.
Amend shoreline zoning to ensure maintenance of vegetative buffers within 75 feet of the normal high water mark of all perennial streams, so it's a little different.
It is a little different.
Yeah, and my thought is if most of the lots, let's say that, let's just take a lot 200 feet, a new lot developed, all right? 200 feet, you had that rule in there, 75 feet, and using these lots on the borders, on the lot lines, they have, perennial stream going down, all right? That's usually how they set up, right? Natural.
Natural barrier or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, it could
So if you have a 200, I'm talking about a vacant lot now, you have 200 feet wide, you go 75 in for one, 75 in the other, that's 150 feet, that leaves 50 feet to put a house.
be. Mm-hmm.
Oh, keep that in mind, all right? And then if you have an existing lot, which is, let's say, usually most of these lots are 100 feet, you go 75, they want to do an expansion to the existing building, and so you go 100, you go 75 feet in, and you go 75 in, you can't do anything, right? You got 150 feet. So, does this apply to existing lots or just new lots, vacant lots?
The,
What's the thought process here?
Go ahead.
I don't know the answer to that question specifically, but I do recall from the guidelines that when one of the districts is Stream Protection District,
Yeah.
I believe,
Yeah.
which we don't have.
Nope.
And so that is something that we would need to add. And it is unique until it reaches the existing zone along the lake. So if it was like, I don't know, like the residential or whatever, if it was already zoned residential, like what you're describing, it would remain so. It would, you
Be
wouldn't.
grandfathered,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, it would basically be grandfathered.
Needs to sort of exempt it out,
Yeah,
yeah.
From that stream protection district.
yeah. I believe I'm recalling that correctly,
So Gary, I got a question for you.
probably for the reasons that you just mentioned.
Stream protection, we don't have a district called that?
No.
We have a land use abbreviation called stream protection.
But it's
What
nowhere
does
else
that
in the
mean?
ordinance. For instance, in Augusta, we have several little streams or tributaries, and that we have zoned them SP 50s or SP 100s, SP 25s. Some of them that are more significant have a 50-foot setback from either side, and the ones that are a little less significant have a 25-foot setback.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have those here, no.
So,
And there is a provision for it in the guidelines.
okay, so
Or
for,
guidelines.
so So I'm on
those
page,
guidelines.
I'm
No,
on page
The
29.
guidelines aren't mandatory, correct?
DEP's not enforcing them.
Okay,
Chapter 1000, you mean?
yeah,
Yeah, they're not enforcing against towns that don't adopt them.
okay.
But
It doesn't mean you
that
should.
could change in 2 years when administration's
Oh,
changed.
yeah.
Okay, so, but I thought, the new shoreline zoning is, okay, chapter 1000 is a rule, right? Is
It's a
rule?
state regulation, yeah,
It's a rule, right?
yeah.
Okay, so, and it says, it references mandatory shoreline zoning act 38, MSR, you know, it's a state law, right?
Mhm.
So, you're saying the rule isn't being enforced by
By
DEP at this point,
Right,
but the, new state law, you know, coming through here, we're considering, is that we're gonna have to, that's gonna be enforced, because we're gonna update shoreline zoning. I'm kind of confused on how this works, I guess.
Well, I mean, again, we have sort of different sources of our mandate, if you will.
Yeah.
One is the comprehensive plan, which the voters of town have approved.
All right.
So that's these. Then there's, you know, whatever DEP is telling us, which, you know, at the moment,
they're not.
actually, you know, I don't know what they're enforcing or not enforcing with regard to the guidelines, with the exception of the excavation contractor
Yeah, that,
certification, they're not enforcing that.
right.
About the rest of it, I don't know, but so we got that as a consideration, so we kinda have to mesh it all together to see where we're lacking and what we need to do to, get up to snuff.
Right.
Okay, I just sort of brought that up.
Yeah, I mean-
I was confused here a little bit.
Well,
All right.
Well,
It's
it's
not-
confusing.
yeah, it's not easy because you're meshing multiple,
Right.
Okay.
And you know, it's a complicated, I guess, topic, for sure. And even if we accepted the most, you know, everything that they had, not that I'm saying we should, but even if we did, you know, would that be a smart move for us?
well, and to add one more layer to the complication is, I believe, and Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, our existing ordinance is more stringent
Already.
already. You know, the town, our predecessors have made a decision that, you know, they, you know, just the bare minimum wasn't good enough for
Right.
Belgrade.
Right. It's a good point. I'm thinking the people in the town of Belgrade will want to continue in that same path. Only because it's been stated on numerous occasions by both town officials and through survey results that water quality is of the utmost importance. As long as that's the case, gonna have to do something with things like this.
Oh, like the, okay, this one here, we're talking about, the 75-foot buffer,
Could be any of them,
okay, yeah. All right, yeah, okay.
right?
But, okay, so going along that line of thought, this requiring 75-foot buffer along the perennial streams, that's not even mentioned. I mean, it's not, way it's discussed here isn't the same, to the same extent as it is in chapter 1000.
Quite likely it would not.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
so
I
this
think you're
seems to
right.
be a lot more
Yeah.
restrictive,
Yeah.
you know.
How that came up, Pete, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if someone had in their mind, it's like, oh yeah, I know this stream. It's in town, and they probably had an example in mind where they thought, oh, it would be a shame to see something go wrong with it,
Yeah,
as opposed to applying it to the state as a whole. I'm just guessing.
yeah. All right.
And with regard to the comprehensive plan, I bet you dollars to donuts that part of the rationale was to have a buffer to take on the stormwater and phosphorus that stormwater is carrying and have it infiltrate before it reaches the stream
Right.
Right,
and hence into the pump lake.
right, and, you know, and that makes sense. But, you know, the 75 foot is a little bit onerous, I think, right off the bat. You know, there's all these people who own land in the back of the 250 feet, you know? Or
Yeah, it
even
wouldn't apply to
within
them.
200 feet or whatever, you know, whatever. You just slap it on 75 feet. That's hard to swallow. So you may wanna start small and put in, you know, 10 feet, 20 feet or something, I don't know. You know, just to get the ball rolling. So,
Well, one of the things I noticed, there's a whole different ways of sort of addressing that issue. Because the problem with 75 feet is, in some places, it's gonna be overkill, in other places, it's not gonna be enough.
Yeah.
And it all depending on slope.
right,
And so, I mean, you know, we may not have that kind of site-specific kind of ability to do that any more than, you know, like 250 feet in some places might not be enough, in other places it's overkill. But we might be able, though, once we get into it more, we might be able to tailor that so it's, you know, some places the buffer exists and other places it doesn't, depending particularly on existing land uses.
on the slope. of the land.
Or existing land uses. You know, like in a woodland area, you know, it would be easier to do than, say, in a farmer's field.
Right, yeah, okay, all right.
Okay. So with that one, what do we need? I'm just kind of getting back to basics in order to address this concern, because
I think
Well,
it's the
let's
same
take-
as the other one.
How
you know.
about, how about we take a look at, what do you call it, address, you know, Smithfield looked at it, some of the other ones. Look, you know, they've already addressed, you know, they've already got theirs and see how they address it, I don't know, just for starters. See how some of the other towns have addressed it. That type of concern.
Did you talk to somebody in Smithfield? And
Oh, yeah,
Did you ask them if they were pretty much word for word DEP document, or did they make changes?
no, I didn't ask them, none of that,
I
no,
got a feeling they didn't make many. Just,
I know.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, well, you know, that's the reason I asked the code enforcement officer if he could come over and talk to us, you know, because we're gonna have some questions and he'd be more than happy to chat with us and tell us how they went through it and all that. And, so I just don't know.
I think, Peter, you know, get back to your basic question of what do we need and what do we, I think we need the same information we need, on that earlier, as of that earlier, you know, we need to figure out how to identify those streams. And then, only then can we get down to, you know,
right,
How to
This-
protect them.
yeah, how to protect them.
right. I did notice that they have a definition of a stream in the
Right.
Smithfield one,
Oh, okay,
whatever that's worth.
Look at that.
Sure.
you know, you get a lot of phosphorus runoff in these streams in this time of the year when it's getting warmer, about a couple of months, you know, a couple of weeks, whatever. And it rains out, and the ground is still frozen,
Sure.
and it
So
goes
stuff-
running right in,
Yeah.
and you'll see the color of the water coming in off the land, coming in, let's say where I'm at,
Sure.
over by Hammond's place, and it's got that kind of a milky looking color, you know?
Yep.
You know, I don't know what's in there, but it's coming from all the upland water flowing down,
Yeah.
and it happens in the springtime, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it just went around before you got snow on the ground and the frost is still on the ground. That's when it happens.
Yeah.
You know.
What I was looking at was, they've incorporated a stream protection zone.
He did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, did they? Yeah.
See, so that could be a great example. Pete.
Yeah, well, you know, you can see around the whole lake,
Yeah.
going on.
So,
But just getting back to the point, you know, 75 feet, I can, you know, that's a little bit onerous the first time around. You gotta, George is saying, you figure the slope out and the size of the stream or whatever, and there must be some way to come up with a formula, I don't know.
Yeah, open for discussion.
Yeah.
Right. The next one after that. Revise all ordinances to be consistent with a comprehensive plan.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah. Check. Done. In process. And then there was another one that was not captured here that you were thinking of. What one was that one?
It was a recommendation to, and with, had to do with ensuring existing septic systems are not polluting the lakes and streams.
No, existing septic systems would include ancient ones.
Right, and,
There are some
where did I find that?
down.
The only reason I even thought of this was because when I got by virtue of becoming a member of the planning board, and I got added to the land use committee, and you guys were already on that. I remember Mark talking at length about concerns by BRCA and the lake associations and others about
Yep.
septic systems
Yes.
impacting water quality and being a source of phosphorus, which was interesting to me because that's not how I personally have not thought of septic systems. I've always been more concerned about nitrates and
Right.
bacteria.
Me too.
Let me see if I can find it. I should have written it down, but I didn't.
Phosphorus.
Housing, growth and development. Okay, this is all it says. Develop regulatory procedures to ensure that existing septic systems are not polluting lakes and streams. Interestingly, there's legislation working its way through the legislature, and you probably already know about this, Gary,
Probably.
about requiring in the shoreland zone all septic systems to be inspected at the time of property transfer.
Yeah,
That's
they do
right,
it, they
there
do
is.
that in China.
Smithfield's got that in theirs.
I think you brought that up before, Pete, I think.
They do it in China.
And it's interesting because what I didn't know about this is that's already a state requirement along the coast,
Is it?
and has been for a while.
Really?
And this bill, which I actually got a copy of somewhere, and is sponsored by actually Gary Hilliard, one of the sponsors, Gary Hilliard from Belgrade.
Very good.
All I did was, I have it here if anybody wants to look at it.
Yeah, I seen it.
You've seen it,
Yeah,
okay,
right.
so you guys are way ahead of me then, this was new to me,
I've not seen
I
it.
just stumbled across it, but
Cool.
I looked at the testimony, and it was interesting to see who testified against it, as well as who testified for it. There was bunch of water quality groups, including one of basically the people that run the sewage treatment plants that were all in favor for it. But against it were primarily licensed site evaluators. There were a couple of individual consulting firms of site evaluators, including Bob Martin's son, and then the State Association of Site Evaluators,
Yeah.
whatever they're called,
Yeah.
and they're the common theme there seemed to be that there's no required state certification for inspectors. And so how do you know the inspection you're getting is worth the money? That was sort of the theme of their opposition to this, that they basically were saying, wait until if you're gonna do this, then you gotta require some kind of mandatory.
Yeah, that's funny, because I have a business card
Interesting.
hanging right over my desk from someone who does for a living septic inspections, and it says state certification number such and such. right
Well,
under his
and
name.
you know what, I think it's, what I gathered, and I didn't look in any further than this, Gary, I think it's more like the DEP contractor,
Volunteer.
it's
too.
voluntary, and so my personal feeling is, well, if it's voluntary or not, doesn't matter. If we require it, people working in this area will get it.
Yeah,
Yeah, let the market drive it, right?
Yeah, let the market drive it, and, I mean, that's one option. I'm not saying that's the right option, I'm just saying that's one way to go, is to, and oddly enough, did you know Daryl Day?
Yeah.
The realtor?
Yeah.
I mean, he was proposing this back in the 1980s here in Belgrade.
yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
that's one option, I don't know what other options there are, but exactly, but I think that's what that's about, and the nice thing about doing it when there's a property transfer is there's money on the table, people are dickering about price, and so it can get played out through those means,
Mm-hmm.
much like, your furnace, does the furnace work?
Yeah.
I don't know what you think about that, Gary, but.
It seems to be working in China. I've talked to the code
Is that right?
enforcement officer there, and it seems to be. They've had that in place for several years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, sort of like what you've been suggesting, I mean, with regard to Smithfield, maybe China, has some language we could start looking at,
Yeah, good point.
rather than, reinventing the wheel.
Right.
I mean, it would be interesting, I mean, we're on a timeline that we'll probably know what happens to this bill before we get that far ourselves.
Right.
And
Do you know-
so it would,
I'm sorry, Paul Mitnick?
oh, yeah.
He's in China.
Oh, yeah. I
He
know.
retired from DEP, right?
Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot that he's out in China as well as, he seems to move around a lot,
He
but,
was in Reedfield, and then he went to China.
okay. Yeah, I know Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah, he made the news about a month ago, didn't he, in the paper? Or something
He's
going
always
on
in the
over
news.
there? Didn't he? Yeah, he made it, in the Morning Sentinel. Yeah,
Yeah,
some issue going on over in China, I forget what it was.
there's an issue, he'll find it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually haven't really digested this, but I just thought I'd bring it to,
I didn't realize it was legislation. I knew it was,
Yeah.
they do it in China,
you
but
want,
I've seen it,
okay.
but I
So-
forgot about it, I think.
Yeah, well,
Cool.
and it's typical of the legislature, so they held a public hearing, then they had a work session, and it was before the
Tommy?
Committee on Labor and Commerce.
Oh.
You know what they decided? They sent it to another committee.
That sounds about right.
So it's Saviello, he's the chairperson.
Yeah.
You know, they asked someone on the Labor Commission, that one of the I think the chairperson said, why is it here? What's it doing over here? Yeah, that was the question.
Yeah. Well, usually they ask that question before they do the public hearing and work it all the way through the process. In this case, they apparently decided, late in the game, but that's fine. So we'll, this might be something it'd be easy enough to track. just-
Sure.
But that's what that's about.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that, Peter, Mark discussing that at length.
I do. I do remember that. Yeah, 'cause I think there were some examples that we looked at, or not looked at, but referenced during the conversation. Some very, very old systems that were around,
Yeah.
basically down in the lakes.
Yeah.
you know.
Well, and the village used to be, I don't know about now, used to be on DEP's priority list for funding
Yeah.
for a wastewater collection and treatment system.
Right.
I haven't followed that for years, but
Mhm.
and when I first moved to Belgrade, like in 1980, people used to refer to Skunk Alley, and I can't find any road by that name, and a number of people told me, well, that's because of all the failing septic systems. It always smells like a skunk down there, and it's Hoolan Road, of course. And that's all changed now, but
Right.
Wasn't that called Skunk, wasn't that formerly named as Skunk Alley?
No, it was.
I thought
a
it was.
nickname. No, a nickname.
Oh, oh, it's a nickname, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So it always was Yulin
Oh,
Road.
yeah,
Oh,
way
okay,
back when I was a
I
kid,
thought it
that
was.
was called Skunk Alley.
Oh, I know.
I don't know if that was really the basis for it or not, but that's what people down there told me, including Daryl Day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's,
Probably more acceptable term than something else.
Yes, It was being
Descriptive.
diplomatic.
Yeah. Alright, so,
So that needs, you know, we just need to capture that item as a add-on, and I guess we have.
yeah, thanks, Nick. Okay, I don't know what else we wanna do tonight necessarily.
My only question is, do we wanna think about inviting, the code enforcement officer over from, Smithfield? You know, take him up on his offer to, chat with us.
I think at some point, but I'm not sure we're there yet,
No.
to ask him
No.
intelligent questions, or at least that's how I feel.
Well, I was thinking that the sooner the better, because it'll give us an idea how they went about it,
Yeah,
and we can, you know, and just see what his thoughts are. He had some experience with it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and, you know, make it a short, you know, relatively short meeting, you know, just general.
for him.
And then if we wanna get him back later on, fine, but I think, I'd like to hear from him, I think you guys ought to hear from him.
Oh,
And I'd like to find out, you know, how
more
it's
process, how they approach
the
it, rather
process
than
and how it's
specifics of their ordinance.
and also how it's working over there too.
Yeah, in answer to your question, I think it would be wonderful to have him over. It's Mr. Marvel, right?
Right, yeah.
I don't know if in April would be enough time for us to kinda at least maybe, is it?
Well, my initial reaction was based on the fact that, I was thinking that with more time, we could better digest the guidelines and then ask questions of him. But I see Pete's point of, you know, not worrying about the details of the content of their ordinance so much as the process they went through and what did they find helpful, maybe even, you know, what resources did they use?
Yeah.
I don't know, they must be in KV cog as well, right?
Should be. He's-
Yeah.
Assuming they're a member.
Yeah, assuming they remember.
Did they just do this?
No, they did it,
In March of 15?
yeah,
Right,
Couple of
reading
years.
it right?
yeah, right, so
So-
they did I remember talking to them, they did it in March 15, they went in front of the town office, I mean, town meeting, and they started the, work on it with the selectmen, you know, and the planning board and the code enforcement
Oh,
officer.
so he had to do the heavy lifting?
In the fall of, 2014.
Mhm.
The fall or the summer of 2014, I forget. And, you know, I just don't know beyond that. And as to who did all the work, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if I hired a consultant or what. but-
Well, there's, you know, just looking at the first page, there's one thing I don't like about it. No table of contents, just like ours.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah, well, that's not good.
Yeah, we want that.
So,
So is it acceptable to invite him to an April meeting? I mean, that would be early in the game. We wouldn't have gone too far.
Yeah.
How's that
Well-
sound?
Why don't you check with him and let him know that we're just getting going in this, and see if it would do any good for him to come talk to us at this stage, or before we get too involved.
Pete, you met this person or know him?
yeah, I met him way back then, and I talked to him on the phone about a
Yeah.
month ago, so.
So he's in Smithfield and Rome.
Yes, he is.
Oh,
He has
okay.
part-time both places.
You know, he may feel like, yeah, I'd like to go and talk to you guys before you get too involved and get going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, it could save us a whole bunch of
Yeah.
headaches, really. I'm not sure what's on the next meeting agenda.
Definitely the sign ordinance.
Definitely the sign one. So the one after that, so the second meeting in April, on
20th.
the 20th, I'm wondering if he would be willing to come over and talk to us then. for a little
Call him
bit.
up. No,
Would you be willing to call him?
I'll call him tomorrow,
Okay.
or if
So-
I can't get a hold of him, you know, I'll call him by the end of next week. No, I'll call him by, Wednesday, next
And
Wednesday.
that would probably give him a month to sort of think about
Yeah.
what he'd wanna tell us, and,
Alright,
you know, what we should get our head wrapped around with, and
alright,
what the hardest part was.
alright. I'll just give you a call when I find out, Pete.
Okay,
Talk.
thank you.
And maybe he might even have references he can bring in to, right off the bat, to help us.
And so, and while that is going on, so that would be a great resource to have him as a guide for us. He could tell us, you know, something about the process that they went through. At the same time, additional resources for us to help make decisions on stuff. I'll reach out to Carrie and request that she reach out to KB Cog to see about getting some resources in for us. So I'll come up with something to her. So that'd be pretty good, right?
Good setup, be a good setup.
Yeah, that we need. Now I guess for quick hits, say if that stuff is, we can address that. These items that are listed here in this spreadsheet, mainly, many of them by using KV Cog, not all, but many of them, or the resources that they provide. Other items in the shoreline zone ordinance that need, that's conflicting one end to the other, we have some examples, and we know if we can get clarity on those things, or at least
Come up with a list.
a list of places that we need to correct,
Yeah.
you know, like the variance thing, you know, stuff like that. Actually, yeah. if you get digital form of this somewhere, you can find there some silly words like
Waiver.
Yeah,
Silly words?
yeah, like waiver. Potentially improper use of terms.
Okay.
When I went
Not
through,
politically right, I mean,
Yeah,
when I went through
they're legally wrong.
the DEP's new guidelines, you know, it raised a number of questions in my mind, but I didn't right off the bat come up with areas where, other than the change of, allowing expansions to do away with the volume, but just base it on square footage.
Yeah.
I didn't come up with anything, maybe you know this off the top of your head, Gary, that, you know, was like a conflict with our existing ordinance, or,
No, I didn't see it. What you're talking about, the non-conforming structures class, that was the biggest change, I thought.
yeah. I don't know if others did, it took me a while to wallow through that, but, so there may be other things in there, I just don't know, I don't know if others looked at it and if they found anything, but,
I have not.
it's well written, they did a nice job. Peter, before we break up for the evening, after we're done talking shoreline zoning, there was something else I wanted to ask about.
Okay, we should be able to do it. Thankfully, we're not at 9 yet, so that's good. So does this sound like a good approach for our little group to tackle these things? Be great to,
well, it's a plan anyway.
yeah. I would be so happy when we could say, oh yes, we've addressed these concerns, we've aligned these things within our ordinance to the comprehensive plan. Report back to the selectmen, report back to any of the members of the community that wanna know about it. That would be very healthy for us.
It'll be interesting when, is it Marple or Marble?
Marble.
Marble, Mr. Marble, meets with us, you know, to see how much, they had to work into their ordinance, things that were, say, unique, or maybe even similar in their comprehensive plan to ours. I mean, you know, water quality obviously is a big issue in North Pond, water quality there really sucks, as well, you know. I've gone bass fishing there where you can't even get the lure through the algae.
I know.
Where, there?
Yeah,
North Pond, yeah.
North Pond, oh yeah, oh, it's horrible.
North Pond, East Pond.
Oh, East Pond, yeah. I didn't know North Pond was
Yeah,
there. Well,
yeah, really bad. Well, later in the summer, yeah. I don't know if it's every year, but, you know, so anyway, obviously there's a lot of commonality there. So, it'd be kind of interesting from that perspective. Maybe some good-
Right, it would be good for us to go through those. So anything else on shoreline zone ordinance stuff? George, what did you have?
Well, I know the sign ordinance isn't on, the agenda, but, one thing we talked about at the last meeting, I think we talked about it, well, anyway, we now have the opinion from MMA, right? And we know that, the proposal that we have before us from Mr. Lassard can't proceed without changing the comprehensive plan as written.
Right, as written.
So I think we talked about the need to go back to the select board with the results of that legal opinion, and also, and basically to brief them on, you know, where we're at as a result of that and what the options are, something along those lines. Because really the options are, we either stop the sign ordinance entirely, or two, proceed but under the current comprehensive plan, which means that Mr. Lassard is not gonna be a happy camper, cause you can't get the big flashing signs. Or three, go back and reestablish, you know, a comprehensive plan.
See, that one doesn't sound practical to me. Option number 3.
Oh, option number 3, no, but it is an option, I suppose, you
What's
know.
option 3?
Well,
Redo the
you
comp
basically
plan?
go back and redo the comprehensive plan.
Oh,
So Mr. Lessard sign ordinance is in compliance with it.
right. Well, I mean, that's, isn't there another one to amend?
Kinda like tail wagging the dog with that, isn't
Well,
it?
Isn't there an option to amend the comprehensive?
No, well, that's what I meant.
That's what he
Okay,
meant.
yeah, okay.
That's what I meant, yeah. But it would mean creating either a whole new district or,
Right,
and, you know, it would require a fair amount of public input, because there are a lot of people that felt strongly about Route 27 not being what he wants it to be.
I agree.
And,
right, it was loud and clear from townspeople.
yeah, from townspeople and business people in
Yeah.
town.
So, that email that I think it was an email that came out that talked about the MMA legal opinion, did that go to select persons?
Pretty
Yeah.
sure it did.
Yeah,
I think
actually
So,
it did,
but
yeah.
do you think that we need to connect the dots for them and say, okay, let's, you know, have
Well,
a,
I think we do,
I do too.
we
Yeah.
do.
I bet you that.
They have a lot of things on their plate.
At least
you know.
compare notes.
so what do you think should we develop a brief, if you will, that we could email them, then maybe go to a meeting and say, this is, you know, this is what we see.
Well, I was wondering the same thing, if that, because, okay, last time we went there, our approach was just to show up and make our, you know, case, basically. And frankly, that got, you know, we were all over the map. Not we, but the discussion went all over the map, you know, it wasn't always on point.
Right.
And I wondered if, you know, I mean, I don't know, you know, they probably are just like legislators that, you know, half of them will read it and half of them won't. But, you know, if we, like you said, a mini briefing document,
Yeah.
here's the issue, you know, here's what we've, you know, been told by MMA's attorneys.
Yeah.
Here are some of the potential options, there may be others. And then meet with them.
Yes, and I'd be happy to go, you know, to a select board meeting to talk about this a bit. To develop a brief in advance that we could share with them, you know, in advance would be, I think, a really wise move. I think it's a great
Do you think
idea.
that would work,
I
be
do.
more effective than just showing up?
I do, because, like you said, you know, some will read, some may not. But I'm thinking, for any that don't, as long as they're willing to listen to us when we show up, great.
Yeah.
For any that do, it could help really piece some things together.
See, when
The other thing it's gonna do is we're gonna have 2 new members by then.
yes, right.
Oh, that's a
So
good point.
so that
Yeah.
the whole issue will be new to them.
Right.
The other thing too is, and this is
I'll take
maybe a
that.
question for you, Nick, in terms of what works best, is maybe you know the answer to this, Gary. Do they get like we do, you know, a briefing, like a packet that goes along with their agenda for things for them to
Yeah.
review?
It's a
Okay, so
binder.
including it in that probably is more effective based on my own personal experience with sending the select board emails. They never respond. I don't think they read them.
How long before the meeting do they get that packet?
So I think they have to have it by the Thursday before that meeting.
Thursday before the
So
Tuesday?
like today,
Thursday before the Tuesday meeting.
yeah, so today I think the binders weren't done, but they're supposed to be done today.
Well, Peter, let me make this offer. I'd be willing to put together a draft of that, you know, the written part, and send it to Nick so that everybody can review it at, you know, in advance of the next, our next meeting. And then we can take it from there if you wish.
Sure, thank you very much for that offer, I would greatly appreciate that, and I think the way you laid it out already would be my approach as well, that here's the opinion, here are our options, as it relates to what, we've been charged to do. You know, because according to the select persons, they said, you know, you guys can go forward and do this with, Mr. Lazard and Mr. Ketchel basically doing the heavy lifting. So they should know what the change of path might
Yeah.
be.
Well, now the town overall is gonna have to do some heavy lifting if, depending on what they want.
Right.
And, you know, there was an interesting well, Pete, you missed the meeting last night, but at the Comprehensive Plan Oversight Committee, Gary,
I forgot all about it. Okay.
I won't tell anybody.
I was still involved with the snowstorm, I did some work, I forgot all about it. I
Um,
had it written down on the calendar too.
Gary, what's Gary's last name?
Mailer.
Yeah, he was saying that he's not convinced, although he voted for the motion, that the majority of the select board even supports the sign ordinance, the idea of a sign ordinance.
Really?
And it's kind of like, I didn't say anything, but it's kind of like, and why are we friggin' working on this?
Yeah, yeah.
And not to mention, it's not fair to Mr. Lassard if that's the case, if that's really the case. I don't know that it is, because they didn't vote.
Right.
But, I mean, it's really unfair to Mr. Lassard. I mean, he's put a lot of time into it. I mean, I have my disagreements with the approach he's taking, but, you know, he has invested a lot of time.
They should be
Absolutely.
upfront with him if that's their position.
Yeah, no, exactly. I know, it's not fair.
Right.
It's not fair to us either.
No, it's not fair to us either, but, you know, it's
Agreed.
particularly not fair to him.
Yeah, 'cause he's been passionate about this.
Yeah, no, he's quite passionate about it.
It's like they wanted to pacify him, so they said, okay, planning board,
Yeah,
Yeah.
work on this.
yeah,
They didn't want to be the bad guy or something, I don't know.
yeah.
All right, so I'll draft
Roger,
something
it's all
up,
your
a first
fault.
draft, and then provide that to you, Nick, to include in the packet for the next meeting, and we'll just need to have a little bit of time set aside to review that at the next meeting. Yeah, assuming we have time for that, I don't know what we got for
It was
application.
their way of saying we don't wanna deal with it, so
Yeah, well, you know, I think it is that, I think, you know, Roger.
pass it on to the planning board and let them worry about it.
It's easier to do that. So, but that's okay. We're gonna run it to ground and find out what can be done. And part of that has been done by getting legal opinion from MMA. That starts us down this path.
It was nice that we were able to get it so quickly, I never would have guessed.
I was very impressed with that quick turnaround.
Yeah,
I mean, there was a day or something.
Yeah.
It was very, very good. So, all right, thank you very much.
yeah, no, I'll draft up something, I'll try to keep it short, and so they'll, might read it.
All right, thanks. So before we go to Gary, anything else to bring up tonight for what's going on? Anything
Not
new?
really,
No, nothing
kind
new.
of quiet right now.
Any applications on it?
Not yet, not now.
The snow might delay some people's plans.
Posted roads.
Oh,
I
yeah.
saw some signs. Yeah, yeah.
Gary, I think it was in today's paper, there was we got yesterday's and today's together
Yeah, I
in the
did see
Sentinel, and there was a write-up about what was gonna be going on at the Sydney Town meeting, and all that was kinda interesting because of the money, but the other thing that I picked up on that I found fascinating, there was a discussion about the rationale for a new fire station was a new 100-lot subdivision in Sydney?
Jim Pepin's doing it.
Oh, is that,
100 lot.
that's a monster.
94.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, but
but
still.
still.
What happened was Jim Pepin, right now it's held up at DEP. He got approval for 14 lots, and he's waiting for DEP approval for another 14.
Yeah.
But he built 14 spec houses in that subdivision this year, and started in the spring, and he sold every house.
Wow.
Whereabouts is it?
Spec house. Before you get to the Middle Road General Store,
Mhm.
four-way intersection,
Yeah.
coming from the Sydney Town Office, down where Knox lives, you know where the Knox family lives?
Yeah.
Before you get to Randy's store, there's a new road that goes up there, it's called Richard Road. It's just,
Oh, I see it, yeah, the road.
yeah, there's
Let's go look
14
for
homes
it.
up there that he's.
Is that all gonna connect in with that new interchange they're building?
No, it's way before that,
Okay.
but that will go across to the Tiffany Road in time,
Really?
yeah. That's the plan, to connect that.
Because that
Wow.
Tiffany Road's no,
Tiffany
that comes
Road's
off the Goodhue Road and it comes up
Correct.
on that ridge top.
Correct,
So the ridge top goes across this way and it would be coming up this way.
correct.
Huh.
He
Isn't
bought
there a
100 acres, so I
Is there a
think
dirt road up there someplace?
Yeah.
Is that the Tiffany Road?
Tiffany Road turns to dirt.
Turns to
Yeah.
dirt,
Further. Yeah, it's a 100-acre parcel, I don't believe he'll get 100 lots, but I think 94 was the plan.
Wow.
Well, you know, of course, my first reaction is, oh my God, I hope nothing like that ever comes to our board.
I know, really.
I can just imagine all, you know, the challenge that would pose, not to mention the people showing up at the meetings. And maybe in Sydney that's not the case. But the other thing is, it just speaks, I mean, Sydney's been the fastest growing town in Kennebec County for a while. And,
Right,
and,
yeah,
and
huge. Last,
I guess it's because, you know, Waterville's on one end and Augusta's on the other, so it's like the ultimate bedroom community.
one of the houses he sold was, she works in Bangor and he works in Westbrook.
Oh, jeez.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Those are commuters. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. Because that's an hour each way.
He's a Baldacci, I don't know,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wonder if
would he be a lawyer? I think he might be a lawyer or a doctor, I can't remember, but, yeah, it's a big subdivision. In 2015, I issued permits for 18 new homes in Sydney. In 2016, I did 40.
How
and
many-
I saw in the town report,
5 or 6?
yeah.
Here, yeah, right.
5 or 6.
Do you think that interchange at the Lions Road has anything to do with it in terms of access to the interstate, in terms of the growth in Sydney, residential growth?
I think it's the taxes, it's the school district, it's central location between Waterville and Sydney.
Yeah.
And the price of the homes too, right? Price, the ultimate price.
Right.
Are their property, is their mill rate lower than Bell rates?
I think so. Yeah. In Jim Pepin's theory is, all these homes that I'm building, thus far, there isn't a child in one of those homes.
Oh, really?
Not a child, not one. In 14 houses, there's not a kid that lives there. And he said, think about it. These aren't starter homes for new couples that are just starting out. These are $200,000 homes, $259,000, $249,000,
Oh, okay.
$239,000. You're not gonna, so you don't see families starting out in these homes. They're a little too pricey for that.
Yeah, the babies are gone, as they say.
Right.
No, that's really interesting.
So there isn't a kid in there.
Because I mentioned this to Becky, and she said, well, Sydney's the only town in the district whose student population's growing.
Oh, yeah. But not in that development thus far.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting.
Well, that's one subdivision. He did one. He just finished. Like a 48 or 50 lot subdivision.
Really?
Yeah.
Another one.
On the Quaker Road,
Oh,
Pepin Road.
yeah, up that way.
If you ever drive in there, that's probably been a 10-year project, and it's fully built out. And there's probably 40 some odd homes in there.
They got kids in there though, don't they?
I believe there is, yeah, I've seen kids in that one, but.
Wow.
And
Have
there
we ever
probably
had a
will be in this
subdivision even as big
that
as?
big.
Yeah, as a small one.
I don't think so.
Wow.
Very interesting.
Although in acreage wise, probably Rocky Shore is bigger.
Acreage wise, yeah.
Acreage wise, yeah.
Rocky,
Only what, 15 lots or something, but
Rocky Shore,
or Rocky Shore. What did I
Yeah.
say?
Rocky Shore.
where's it?
Okay.
Belgrade?
Off the west road, parallel to the east-west road.
But they
It's
put,
where we did the amendment.
Oh,
but they
We
put,
met there.
right, yeah, okay.
they
Yeah.
put 60 acres or so into a reserve, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, they're gonna be expensive too, I imagine,
Yeah,
you know,
that was their whole
pushing,
business plan.
500,000.
Yeah, that was their whole
Oh,
business
yeah.
plan. I remember when that was approved, I can't
I mean, it's
remember.
the ones up by the west road,
Oh, no, they're down. He's talking about the ones that.
or down by the lake.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
I mean,
going-
eventually there'll be several along the west road too.
Yeah, the ones along the west road, I imagine, they're
Might
gonna
be.
be close to 500,000, time they get through with the land and the house, it'll be $500,000 investment.
Uh,
You know?
ones-
I would think they would be certainly more affordable than the ones on Long Pond,
Oh,
but,
yeah.
Right.
I mean, that was their whole
But-
business plan, was to do fewer lots, but real high end.
Yeah, well, the ones down by the lake, didn't they go for 700,000?
What, the lots?
Yeah, down on the water.
No, I think it was 285,
But someone was saying, well, Kevin Hawes put did the land work.
Oh, the road was $1 million.
Yeah, no, that was
but
an expensive
then
road.
Then the work that Hawes did for the rocks, you know, the landscaping and all that
Just,
stuff, blah,
just
blah.
moving
That
all
was
the rocks.
pushing, what,
They might have been. I thought you was talking about just the cost of the lot. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, there's boulders down there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, that.
Yeah, there was,
size of cars.
Yeah. What I call rock garden.
bigger than cars.
Bigger than
Yeah.
cars.
Cause I think the contractor said he'd have to get somebody out from out of state to come up with a bulldozer and an excavator to move them.
What, in the road?
No,
On some of
on,
them?
on some of the lots,
down by the lake.
yeah.
Yeah.
Man, they were humongous.
Some of the rocks they had to blast. They
Yeah.
couldn't,
Yeah.
they blasted some of them.
Even down on the water, you're not gonna go very fast in a boat down there.
Oh, no.
It'd be good fishing though.
You know where you're going.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, the loons were out there that day, and they were plentiful down there.
Well, switching gears, one last thing, let's see, last week, so on a non-planning board week, there was a select women's meeting, right? So I went to that one, and, I didn't go to the, meet the candidates meeting, I had hoped to, but it didn't work out for me. But it was good to go to the, select person's meeting. I saw Becky there, we sat near each other.
That's where Ernie got chastised.
Right,
Ernie got chastised,
yep.
for what?
A little bit anyway. So, how do I say this? There was he advocated for something, and that
The
he did it
41
publicly through the newsletter.
Yeah.
I think is the simplest way to say
his
it,
personal view
personal.
of,
of a topic.
of a topic going behind the selectmen's back to get on the ballot.
So he advocated one way. He took a position in his personal view and did it through the town.
It's the letter of his that was included in the, town newsletter. Did you get the town newsletter?
Yeah,
It's
I
in
kinda
there.
read it real quick, I
It's
didn't,
in there.
Yeah.
yeah, I read it quickly.
That's illegal to do. There's a Maine
Oh.
Supreme Court.
So
case
it
on
cost him $60 and some change for the cost of putting that in and stuff.
Yeah.
Now they're gonna write up guidelines as to what it can be used for and not used for.
Oh,
And he apologized and said he would pay the town back for the
Yeah.
for that cost. So.
Yeah.
So anyway, it didn't stick around too much longer after that. There were some.
No,
other
we both
things.
took off.
Yeah, we did, and there were some things that could have been interesting to listen to, or not. So I left.
you never know at a town meeting, I mean, at the selectmen's meeting, what's gonna happen.
Were you on their agenda to discuss with
No,
them?
I just went as a
You
taxpayer.
just went,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, just to hear what was
You
going
did
on.
too?
No, because they were gonna be talking about, Spectrum Generation money for food on, Meals on Wheels and
Yeah, yeah.
stuff, so.
We had a different.
I was doing twofolds.
Got it.
So.
Jack
anyway.
Sutton goes to every one of those meetings,
Oh, yeah.
he has for years.
Yeah.
Well, and the other members of the budget committee are typically at those meetings too.
Yeah.
Now they are,
Yeah.
This time of year.
yeah.
budget
Yeah, this time of year.
Yeah, budget time. Yeah, and one of the persons running for select board was
The tall guy,
the tall guy.
Oh, yeah.
with a booming voice.
Howard?
Howard, yeah. He's chairman of the Budget committee.
Yeah.
I did go to the candidates night. It was good. It was really well attended.
Great.
Apparently it went 2 hours. I left after an hour. I had learned all I needed to know.
Did Scott Dearman show up for that?
Yeah,
Good.
yeah, he was there. Did a nice job.
And one of the, a young lady, is it
Yeah.
short?
Jordan.
What is it?
Schultz.
Schultz.
Stolt?
Stolt, yeah, that's it.
That
What's her
lady.
first name?
Jordan.
Yeah, Jordan, that's right.
So she was there?
I think every candidate.
She was there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, everybody was there,
Yeah.
including the people running
If they
the
were
elected
smart,
school
they were gonna be
board
there.
that don't have, are running unopposed.
Yeah.
And
Morris was there.
yeah, Morris was there.
Yeah, good. Right.
Yeah, no, it was good.
I had hoped to go, but it didn't work out.
A no-show to that would be a no vote.
Yeah,
Correct.
that wouldn't be good.
No, you might vote for yourself and that'd be about it. Get one.
That's right.
So I just wanted you to know that I went to that. And I was like,
So voting's tomorrow.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Try not to vote against the comprehensive plan, the commercial development review ordinance.
Right.
My voting's all done.
Mine too.
Yeah. Oh, you did yours absentee? Yeah, all right. I'm gonna come in after work and vote. So,
I'm gonna be there Saturday afternoon through that mess. That's enough.
yeah. Yeah.
Probably gonna be boring town meeting on
Yeah, I
Saturday.
got a feeling.
I don't know, I was at that one at Smithfield, had 83 articles on the agenda, and we were out in half an hour.
That's the way Sydney's is too.
Oh, is that right?
Sydney, they used to, for years, they served lunch. It's at the
Yeah,
school,
I
they
remember.
served lunch. The last couple of years, it ended at 11 o'clock before lunch, so they started serving breakfast instead.
Just so there was a
What time
social
do-
aspect
What time
to
do
it?
they start?
So that's
What
kinda
time do they
nice.
start in Sydney?
From 9 a.m.
What time does ours start?
One.
One.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, I don't know about recent years, but in some years,
Some years.
pretty contentious, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, Christ, from 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. was
Really?
very common. Very
I went to
common. You know what?
Vassalboro,
You don't get the attendance you used to get.
Right.
I went to Vassalboro one last year, and they had like a smorgasbord with all the families going in first, buffet style.
Yeah.
They'd all come in, meet there and eat and shoot the bull for a while, then have the meeting, gone.
Yeah.
That's kinda nice. That's sort of old school.
Yeah, it is.
Smithfield only does donuts,
Yeah.
donuts and coffee, and that's it.
I once had to speak at town meeting, for, Dixfield,
Dixfield.
as a representative of DEP, so, really well received.
Yeah.
But, but while I was waiting, they had a fist fight break out on the floor.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh my
these
gosh.
logger types, with shoulders about 3.5 feet wide,
Yeah.
beating on each other.
And that was
I
obviously,
don't even know what it was about.
that was obviously
I don't
before
know
you
what
gave
they-
your little.
Yeah, no, it was before, yeah, no, I
Yeah.
just stepped to the back of the room.
Yeah.
They only
I
had
think you
68.
should have left, you know, after the
vote
fight. you
on
got it, you're not
silent
gonna
ballot.
say anything.
You know what the population is in Smithfield for voting, roughly?
1,000?
They only had 68 show up for secret ballot votes,
Wow.
and that was it.
Sydney population.
It had about 80
almost
sitting
doubled
there that
already.
night for a meeting.
Yeah. It really is growing fast.
It was 4,200 last census. Belgrade's what, 27?
Yeah,
26?
roughly, yeah.
But man, they've got a wicked budget in Smithfield.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And they're putting money, a lot of money.
It's
back
higher
into
than
it.
ours?
Yeah.
Really?
What are they putting money into, Roger?
They've, a lot of the municipal buildings, and fire trucks and stuff, it's unbelievable.
I mean, I've always been surprised that Sydney had a public works department.
I know.
Yep.
I mean,
And
now
yet-
that it's the size that it is, it's less surprising, but,
And yet-
Yeah.
Yep.
North
When it was a
Pond, they're
smaller
only
town.
giving them, I think it was $2,000 for their water quality, and that was it. They pay their selectmen, and they pay their planning board for every meeting.
How much?
Board chair got $50. Anybody else, planning board got 25. Selectmen, board chair, I think got 3,700.
Well, they must do a lot of work,
Well,
you know.
our selectmen get paid here.
Huh?
Our selectmen get paid.
Yeah, they're what, $25 a meeting, I think, that's it.
No, it's one.
It's a hundred. isn't it? 125?
Sydney's like 33,000, 3,500.
But I thought the selectmen, when they get paid, though, in thousands, those selectmen are doing a lot more work.
They are, we don't have a town manager in Sydney.
Right, okay, yeah,
Right,
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 yeah,
right,
that's the difference.
right.
Yeah,
So they meet once a week, not once every 2
Yeah,
weeks.
right. And Mercer does the same thing.
Yeah, we don't have a town manager,
Hmm.
which is shocking to me for a town that size.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
that
They may
is
have to
surprising.
change.
It's gone to the voters numerous times and they've always voted it down.
Really?
Oh, well.
But we
It's
get
interesting
administrative
anyway, going to
assistant
different towns
that's
and-
sharp. I mean, she runs the place. She's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, well, that's where like, even when Belgrade was smaller, you know, when Carl Yetten was here, I mean, he
Yeah.
was the equivalent of a town manager.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, and that's the way Sheila is in Sydney.
Now, what does Rome have?
Rome,
Yeah.
It is,
they don't have a manager.
no.
Same thing.
Do they have an administrative assistant?
I don't remember. I know that selectmen used to meet every Monday night, cause I used to work there.
In Rome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I know they didn't have a manager.
I never could figure out when they're open over there in Rome.
Oh, you have to go to Betty's house next door. They're never open.
All right, gentlemen, anything else for tonight? If not, we can call it a wrap. All right, thanks. Thanks, everybody.